So with that said, I am an avid supporter of therapy. I think I've never actually gone to any sort of formal therapy, but I see the value and the need for it. And I realize that a lot of areas of health that we don't physically see, we oftentimes don't put enough attention to. I've had a lot of conversations recently with people in terms of their own mental health journey. And I realized that there is a bit of a gap, so to speak, in terms of how we view it. And so this one day I was talking to a friend actually at the time, and it just kind of popped in my head, and I was like, oh, this would be perfect. Or at least I thought the analogy was perfect, but you'll let me know if this is like all wrong. I kind of have the 3 levels of like self-therapy. Then there's like, in a sense, kind of like socialized therapy with your friends and your family. And then your professional level of therapy where you go to a therapist or a psychologist. And I kind of liken that to skincare because it's the same thing. The way I have my own skin routine, but if I notice something is just problematic and I can't get it together on my own, I reach out to my friends. And then if that's not enough for whatever reason, then at that point I would potentially seek out a dermatologist. And so I was just wondering, like, what do you think about that view?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Maybe, I don't know, you want to come work at the office. No, I'm kidding. Here's the thing. There's people that are taking advice from people, strangers that are just, like YouTube or podcasts or whatever. Everyone has personal experience. Being able to do your own self-therapy is really helpful. Learning how to self-regulate, emotionally regulate, identify your own triggers, figure out, what's going on and why, I think is really necessary. And the way that I see my job anyway is to help people. I think of myself as like therapy is like a mirror, it's a reflection. So I'm just holding up a mirror for my clients to be able to see and sort through their stuff pretty much on their own. It's just that they need some support. So you hit the nail on the head because it should be a step up process, if that makes sense. If we're taking really good care of ourselves, we won't necessarily have to go and talk to somebody. I always think of physical things or medical things. So I say, we could learn how to be fit by ourselves. We don't need a gym. We don't need a personal trainer. We don't need fitness classes. We know typically, like, to be physically healthy, you eat real food, you move your body around. Very simple, but it's easier in theory than it is in practice. So that's why we have gyms. That's why we have fitness classes. That's why sometimes you have to get a personal trainer or do a challenge so that you can get that support. And that's what I think of therapy as, is there's so much free information out there. The library itself is free. So you can go spend your time reading, you can buy books, you can, buy courses, you can journal. We know what we're supposed to do to be well mentally and emotionally, but that's easier in theory than in practice sometimes. And if you try those things on your own and you hit some roadblocks, then maybe it's time to enlist the support of someone who's trained, who knows how to do this thing, to support you. And that's why I think it's a step-up process, just like you mentioned. We go to the doctor annually for physicals. We get our vision checked at least once a year. We find value in seeing a dentist every 6 months when nothing is wrong. We don't go because something is wrong. We do it because we keep this regular wellness routine that helps to prevent for things to go wrong. But unfortunately, because of the history of, the stigma of mental health, that's not the way that we see taking care of our mind and our emotional well-being. And so unfortunately, a lot of people do come in when the stuff hits the fan. So if we were using mental health and wellness as a preventative means, we would be able to bypass so many issues, but it's a work in progress. So it's really just at this point about, helping people to slowly open up to the idea of having support, whatever that means. And I always say to clients when they come in, I can give you a whole list of books, a whole plan right now to leave here today and not see me again. And if you do all the things on the list, you'll be better than you were when you came in. But if that's not something that you can do on your own, that's okay. Like, we accept support in so many other areas of our lives, but for whatever reason, we don't want to take support in this place, So it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but I love that you're advocating for people to focus on their wellness.
I am, but I love that you said the preventative health side of it. I didn't even think about it like that. That is so true. And it would be interesting to see in the next like 10, 15, 20 years if that is something that eventually is incorporated in preventative health, like insurance policies and coverage, for example. That would be kind of an interesting thing to explore. You actually, like, you said stuff that was so good. I'm like, oh, wait, what was going to be my next question? But so the next thing I do kind of with that kind of self-therapy, for example, what would you say are like maybe the first 3 steps someone could take that is trying to formally create like a self-therapy plan?
I think along the lines of, I want to say awareness, because if you're not aware, then you don't realize that there's something that you need to implement or change,
Mhm,
try.
mhm,
So I think that awareness is really, 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 really like a high priority, because that's what's going to be able to help you to see blind spots and what's getting in your way and things like that. So awareness is key, because if you are in denial, you don't think that there's an issue, then of course you're not going to do anything differently. So I would say that's
mhm,
probably the first step. um,
mhm,
the next step I would say is experimentation. So you have to try things out in order to figure out what's going to be. I say to my clients, like, what your formula is. All of us have a different formula because we're
mhm,
unique. So what works for me may not work for Cindy, may not work for Bob, And so
mhm,
that's why you have to experiment. Even when you go to the doctor, an MD, and they give you medication for something, it's
mhm.
experimentation, because they don't know how it's going to affect your body, how it's going to work within your chemistry individually. And so that's why they say, okay, come back in 2 weeks, come back in a month so we can follow up, right? And so if that in and of itself is experimentation, then we have to kind of take that approach in this realm as well, that you're going to have to try things out. And I think what's discouraging is that sometimes people will try a couple of things out and it won't work right away. And then they'll just say, oh, well, this just doesn't work altogether. And so
Yeah.
what I say is that you have to be patient. So maybe that's like the third part of it, is being patient with the process, because you can't work out on January 1st and think you're going to have a six-pack on January 2nd. And that one workout is going to last you for the 365 days of the year. You have to keep
Mhm.
going back. You have to keep trying, new workouts and working out different parts of your body and trying different regimens on different days. And you have to experiment. And so I would say the awareness, the experimentation on what things might be helpful for you, and then patience with the process, because it takes time.
That's so true. And what you just said kind of reminded me, I always think of like us as beings and every aspect of it, where lifelong, it's like a lifelong commitment to like working on oneself. We're never going to reach perfection. And so we're always a continuous work in progress, no matter what area of life that is in. So,
You mentioned this commitment to lifelong progress and evolution, and I think that one of
yeah.
the things that gets in the way is that, for whatever reason, maybe because of society or culture, we say, oh, well, by the time I'm 30, I'm supposed to fill in the blank. By the time I'm 5, I'm
Mhm.
supposed to have X amount of kids. By the time, and we put these restrictions and these markers on our lives, and we don't always hit them, because that's life. Life happens.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things I was supposed to do this year, but guess what? Like,
Canceled.
and so
Oh,
we have to make tentative plans, but be flexible in knowing that it might change up and it's okay. Like, we're not in a race against anybody else. So that
mhm.
commitment to our own progress and evolution is really important. I love that you mentioned
Yes, I know. I love that you said that because that's part of why I started the channel, and you obviously, kind of the background of
that.
it. And it was a bit of a struggle to kind of just come to terms with like, man, things are not going according to the plan that I created. And I am like a serial, like arbitrary deadline implementer and just set these deadlines because it makes me feel like I'm
Mhm.
being productive. And kind of like you said, it ends up sometimes kind of being counterintuitive and holding us back actually. So I'm thank you for adding that to it.